All right, Chris, thanks. As we continue to battle a surge of COVID here in Ohio and around the country, today an FDA panel met to talk about booster shots. That panel decided to reject Pfizer's request for COVID booster shots for Americans 16 and older. The panel saying that decision was based on the current data that they have before them. The FDA panel is currently only endorsing booster shots for Americans 65 and over or those at high risk for severe disease. Well, Ohio reported almost 8,500 additional COVID infections today, and there are now almost 1,000 COVID patients in the ICUs around the state. Lead investigator Brian Duggar joining us here in studio to discuss these numbers. Brian, obviously we aren't seeing improvements in cases like we had hoped, but what are some of the numbers that kind of stick out to you this week?
Hi, Jeff. Yeah, obviously the big number that jumps out, 317 COVID-related deaths this week. Last week, that was 207. The week before is 148. So we've doubled the number of deaths just in the past 2 weeks. And as you just mentioned, we have nearly 1,000 people in the ICU, so that number is only going to go up. Now, if you want to look for one piece of good news, the vaccine does seem to really be helping. Of the deaths from last week, 95.5% of those deaths were in the unvaccinated. So the people who are vaccinated are very well protected at this point.
All right, and we got ahead of ourselves there, but that graphic that we were just looking at really tells a lot. It's talking about hospitalizations, Brian. And what can you tell us about those numbers right now?
Well, what I can tell you about hospitalizations is that we continue to see a really steady climb. When you look at this week compared to last week, it's about 500 more. In daily hospitalizations, we're seeing nearly 250 people a day. But if you want to go back to that breakthrough data I was talking about earlier, when you look at the nearly 1,700, 1,800 hospitalizations from last week, 94.5% of those patients were unvaccinated.
You posted something on Twitter, Brian. Once again, lead investigator Brian Duggar joining us here in studio to go over these COVID numbers here in Ohio this week. You posted something on Twitter earlier today about the growth of infections. Can you talk about that case rate growth that we've seen?
Yeah, Jeff, when you look at the cases per 100,000, Ohio is now at about 680. And when you go back to July 8th, that number was 19. And here's another really interesting number. If you're going back to July 8th, you look at Pike County, 1 out of every 13,500 residents during that time period had COVID. Today, that number is about 1 out of 50. And Pike County is not the only county that's seeing similar numbers. Unfortunately, it's just exploding across the state at this point.
And just to give folks an idea, Pike County, south of Columbus, going down near Chillicothe and Portsmouth area. Brian, we appreciate the insight. More to come at 6 o'clock. Thank you, sir. Well, take a look at this in Washington. The flags represent each person to have died from COVID. This year, it has 650,000 flags in about 43 sections along several walking paths. The artist is also inviting people to dedicate an individual flag to a loved one that they've lost.